When you're out in a place like this, you can't help but notice God's handiwork all around us. You can't help but feel all the things that God has made. I know that Matt and I in our sermons, we talk a lot about placing scripture in context when we read it and giving the story some context. But I want you not to just place the scripture in its original context, but I want you to also place yourself in the context when we read the story today. That's what this is all about, being out here. And so today we're going to read the Genesis story in a context not too different than it may have originally been told. And so I want you to imagine with me, sitting around a fire, maybe 2000 BC, sitting there with your son or your daughter, when your son asks, "Dad, where did this tree come from? Who created this tree? Who created the sun?" And you're brought back to a story that your grandfather told you around a very similar fire. And so I want you to imagine that as we read the Genesis story today in a place not so different than it may have originally been told. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while the wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit from seeds in them." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seeds on them. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. So when we separate ourselves from this story in this place, we begin to view nature as being something outside of ourselves. We view ourselves apart from nature instead of being a part of this creation that God has made. And when we do that, the balance of nature begins to shift. And we see harmful consequences because of that. Today, I'm standing in front of what used to be the town of Stapp, Oklahoma. And Stapp, Oklahoma was the logging capital in southeast Oklahoma. They'd have a railroad come through and they would log and clear cut large swaths of old ancient forests in the area. And before you knew it, in the early 1900s, in the late 1800s, this whole entire area, all that you see behind me, was cut and cleared. And when they were done cutting, they would burn the land so that it would be more fertile, and then they would sell it to the highest bidder. This particular area, the highest bidder was the National Forest Service. and they sold this land for only $1.42 an acre. That's all they could get for this land because it was viewed as worthless. And now it's priceless. You see, when we separate ourselves from what God has created, it can be devastating. But it doesn't take long for it to grow back and for us to become a part of nature the way that God intended it to be. And so when we talk about the balance of all of creation and our integral role in it, we also remember that this place is crucial to our own health. The smallest thing here in this sanctuary impacts us. Let's take this grub, for example, that I found underneath this rock. I'm sure you've all seen grubs very similar to this, maybe in your own yard. Americans, we love our yards. We love our lawns, our nice green, pristine lawns. And we spend millions of dollars a year trying to get rid of little grubs just like this one. But what we don't really think about when we spend all that money getting rid of things in our yard is how it impacts the environment. This little seamless grub that we pay no attention to, it grows up. It turns into the June bugs that you see all around your yard, running into your windows, turning over and dying on your back porches. It turns into those June bugs, and those June bugs in turn feed different animals like bats, raccoons, squirrels, all kinds of stuff, and then it fertilizes our grass. And so if we spend all of this money getting rid of something that is so crucial to the environment, we end up damaging what God created without even thinking about it, all for a pretty green lawn. And so that just goes to show how even the smallest thing impacts the health of all of creation. And so that just reinforces the fact how important it is that we take care of all of what God has given us in this sanctuary. This is a story about our God who is more expansive than the stars, who's bigger than the known universe. How that God turned his eyes to this place, created this place for us to love and enjoy just as he loves and enjoys. And so I hope that by joining me today, you've been able to see how important it is that you are a part of this sanctuary, in this place. How vital it is that you care for this place, just as this place has cared for you. It's crucial. It's crucial that we understand that God's creation wasn't meant for us to enjoy and abuse. We're caretakers. God created it for us to love. And I pray that today, by joining me, by seeing this beautiful sanctuary that God has created for us, you can better understand that role that God has placed before you and truly live into it.